Okay, right, let's going live. Now. Okay. Just check my brushes. Okay. So I can see there's people, which is great. Welcome everyone. This is going to be a little weird for me. I haven't done a live stream in a long time, and I can't see anyone, which is I'm used to. I'm used to zooming, so I'm going to have to remember to look at the chat. There should be a chat box next to the stream, and if you're out there, put something in the chat just to show me you're here. Oh, fabulous. Hi, Christopher. Great. And if you can hear me okay, I hope, and see me okay, I'll just put it back on me for a bit. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Okay, so let's get painting. I'm hoping some of you are painting along. If not, that's fine. I know some people have emailed me saying they're going to watch it later, and the stream will be available later if you want to watch it. Okay, right, let me put him onto overhead. There we go. So I've got my drawing done. I've got my paints out and all the wells look fine. Okay. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I will try and remember to look at the chat. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Mary. Nice to have you here. I was going to say nice to see you, but I can't really see you. It's kind of a strange word to use. Okay, right. Just move my chair around a bit. I'll just briefly go through my materials. I know I've got some people who've already been in the classes and people I know, but I'll just briefly go through materials. So I'm working on Fabriano Artistico, 140-pound cold press. It's my, I think it used to be my favorite paper. I'm now moving more towards Saunders Waterford, which is a lovely paper, and they do that in 200-pound, which is slightly heavier and I think slightly nicer to work on, but it is more expensive. So kind of my day-to-day bread and butter paper is Fabriano Artistico, and I'm working 10 by 14, which is quarter sheet size, which is quite a nice size to do. And my brushes, now my absolute favorite brushes, well, they used to be my absolute favorite brushes, are Escoda Reserva. This is a travel one, you can take the handle off. And these are Kolinsky Sable, and these are absolutely beautiful brushes. But the price of them has gone up so much in recent years that I've been trying to move over to synthetic, well, not synthetics, cheaper ones. And the ones I like the most are these silver black velvet. I know a lot of people use these, so I'm going to be using these probably mostly. I've got a 10, which is a nice sort of all-purpose size. I've got a 12 and a 14. May not use the 14, but certainly the 12. I think we'll be using. And I've also got this is a lovely brush. This is an Escoda brushes are just fabulous. I just love them. This is an Escoda Aquario wash brush. It holds lots of water, points really well. Escoda do lovely pointy brushes, which is really essential for watercolor. But if you haven't got one of these, a biggish round will be fine. Okay, paints. I've got a little screen with my palette on. Let's just go through the paints. I'm just looking at the chat. Hi, Debbie, Mary, Chris. Hi, Donna, Dottie, Christopher, Philippines. Wow. Elizabeth, fabulous. Oh, it's so nice to see people. Welcome. You never know with these things whether anyone's going to turn up. But so it's so lovely to see everyone. And if you're painting along, I hope some people are. Okay, let me just put them on the palette. So let's just go through the colours. We're going to be using quite a lot of these colours actually. A lot of the paintings I do, we use some painters will use just a few, and then the next painting will use another subset, but we're going to be using almost all of these. So I've got a yellow, which is Hansa yellow, which is kind of a greenish yellow, and we'll be using that to make a lot of our greens. This one is kind of optional, but I like it. This is cadmium yellow orange. I thought this was Holbein, but I think it's actually Sennelier, and it's got a lovely opacity to it. We might be using some of this in the oranges, we might not. Yellow ochre, very standard colour. Vermilion. Now, this is an orangey red, so if you have an orangey red that's similar to this, like a Pyrrole or a Naphthol, maybe even a Cad red light would do. That would be good. We'll be using a lot of this because it's a full scene. And then we have Permanent Rose, which is a pinkish, it's more towards the blue side. So these two reds, if you've got these two reds, you can mix up any red you like. Burnt Sienna, Cobalt Turquoise Light, I don't think will be, there's not a lot of turquoise in this, we probably won't be using that. Cobalt, Cobalt Blue, Ultramarine Blue, and Cerulean Blue. I do like Cerulean Blue, especially in watercolour. It granulates really nicely, and it does. We're going to be using this in the sky. If you haven't got cerulean, cobalt will be fine for the sky. And black, and this is actually lamp black, which is very intense. You don't need very much of it to change your colours. And this is neutral tint. I'm actually going to be using, this is neutral tint over here as well. This is Michael Harding neutral tint, which I do really like. And it is pretty neutral. It's a mixture of three colours. I think it's phthalo blue, quinacridone red, and some kind of yellow. It might even be Hansa yellow, that mixture. And that's a pretty neutral grey. You can dilute it to a neutral grey. Okay. So that's the palette. Okay, back to overhead. What else are we going to use? I've got a spray bottle. And we're going to be putting in some texture, probably in the foreground, in the trees. It just adds a nice speckly texture to the paint surface. And the other thing I am going to use is this. Certainly for illustrating things, is a value scale. Now, I should put a shout out to Paul Foxton, who put me onto this value scale. It's absolutely fabulous. It's made by a guy called Paul Centore, and I'm never sure if that's the right way to pronounce his name. But and if you go onto eBay and look for Munsell value scale, you can buy one of these. And it's nice because it's white clean, which is nice, and it has half steps as well, which is really good. And these are actual neutral greys. A lot of the value scales you can buy in art shops, they're just not neutral grey. they're slightly off. Some are slightly brown, and so this one will actually give you a real grey. Okay, have I forgotten anything else? I've got some water. I've got paper towels. I have my reference. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Right, now let's have a look at this reference. We're going to make a plan. So let me just put it on Zoom because we won't need to see the palette right now. Okay. Now this reference, I should say this is a live stream. It's not really a class. It's something for fun, something where we can experiment and play, and really, really importantly, just enjoy ourselves. If painting isn't enjoyable, there's no real point doing it. So, and it's an ambitious reference, I have to say. I did actually once I advertised this, and I went back and thought, are you really doing the right thing here? Because there's a lot going on in here. We've got all these beautiful colours. I mean, this is what it was what drew me to it. It was, the beautiful fall colours, the real richness of the colours, and the contrast with the, this beautiful white front of the church. Background mountains. We've got some sky up there, and then we've got rocks, and we've got reflections, and we've got water, and we've got foliage. I mean, there's a lot going on in here, and I hope we'll end up with a good painting. even if we don't, I'm sure we'll learn a lot along the way. Okay, so let's think about how we're going to tackle this. We're going to work from the top down. We're going to do the sky. We're going to do the background mountains. We're going to put a wash, a first layer over the foliage and the church, and then a first layer over the water. And then we're going to, once that's dried, we're going to come back in and put in the darks and start showing the form of things. One thing I'm dreading doing is I always dread doing reflections. So why I chose something with reflections, I don't know. But you know, you've got to challenge yourself. If it's not challenging, it's not worthwhile. Okay, right. Okay, so sky, mountains, first layer of color on the foliage and the church, foreground, water. Let's have a slightly deeper look into what's actually going on in this reference, and I'm going to switch you over to Chroma Magic. So Chroma Magic is my tool because a couple of years ago I was having real trouble painting. Let me just put him over Chroma Magic. I'm going to take me off because I don't think you really want to see my noggin. Okay, and this is a free tool, and it came out of, I was having trouble, my painters just weren't coming out how I wanted them to come out, and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. And I finally twigged that I wasn't able to see colour very well. And that's how I came across Paul Foxton, and I was watching his YouTube videos, and he introduced me to the way of thinking about colour, which is the Munsell colour system. They call it a system, but it's just a way of thinking about color. And I realized my color perception was just not very good. And so I wrote this tool, and it's free. If you go to chromamagic.com, you can use it. You can upload your own photos, yeah, just use it in your own work. And you can load up your photo. And there's a little zoomed in version over here, and you can click anywhere and it will show you exactly what the color is. And it shows you in Munsell notation. So if I click on, let's click on a bit of sky here. Okay, and it shows you the color. This is the color in the image, and this is the closest notation. And we can see it's obviously a blue, but it shows you the color. It will show you the value. So this is the value down here. It goes from dark 1 to light 9, and it'll show you the hue, what the color is: red, blue, orange, green. And it will also show you the chroma of the color. Now, chroma is the thing that I was missing. I wasn't really thinking about chroma. This is actually quite a high chroma reference, so we won't be thinking about this too much, but we will be looking at the value. The values are very important in this. Everything's pretty much high chroma, but the values are a bit misleading because the colors are so bright. So let's just put this into grayscale, and I just want you to see how the values change in this reference. And when you take the color out, all of this, the trees and the foreground, yes, there are some darks in here, but they're all pretty much the same value. And they're quite a mid. If I click on one, I'll show you, we can see what the value is. Right, yeah, it's around a mid value. All of these trees are a mid value, even the bright bits. Like over here, you know, it's a bright red, but it's a mid value. So we've got to be careful. If we're going to make this convincing and read well and look good as a value design, we've got to get these values right. And another thing you can do, if I click on this, is called value. It takes it down in steps. So it's, these are equal value steps. I just take it down to maybe 3 steps. Yeah, you can see that in these trees in the foreground, we've got a mid value on the light side of the trees and then a darker value on the dark side. And regardless of what the color is, it's always a mid value there. So as one thing I was going to show you, this is a very early I think I've been painting around, well, I don't know, 3 months or so. So this is an example of what we're not going to do. So if I just bring this, so this is, I don't know, I did this in a class, I think. Yeah, so look at my trees. I mean, they're terrible, aren't they? I was actually quite pleased with this when I finished it, but yeah. These are too light. Everything is too light in here, and it makes it look like confetti. So we don't want confetti in here. And yes, the church is standing out, but it would be a lot better if this was much pulled down in value. Okay, I still quite like it, actually. It's kind of sweet. Right, let's just put him back onto the overhead view. So that's the main thing I want us to take from this is we've got to make sure our trees are not up in the high bit of the value scale, but down towards the middle. Right, I'm just going to flick back so I can see the chat. There we go. Great. Right, everything seems to be working. I hope you can see it okay. I've got a little warning there. Let me know in the chat if things go awry. I was actually quite surprised things were working as well as they are. Okay. So I'm just going to get a bit of scrap paper just to show you what I mean about these values. Ooh, sorry. My chair used to have wheels and then it broke, and I've been using a chair without wheels, which means I have to shuffle around. Right, I'm going to get a bit of scrap paper. Now we've got these bright reds in here and these bright oranges. We want to get those down the value scale so this beautiful white front of the church shows up. I just want to show you what I mean. It might be tricky. We might need a couple of layers to do this, but we'll try and get as close as we can from the get-go. If I take my, let's say my vermilion, let's take my vermilion here. And what I used to think is, okay, we've got the light side of the trees. Okay, I'll make it light. So we add some water into it, which will make it lighter, obviously. So I put in my light side of the tree. And yeah, that looks okay. I mean, it looks all right. Don't you think? It's not too bad. A bit of trunk. And then I put in my dark side of the tree. What should we do for that? A little bit of burnt sienna, a bit of permanent rose, just a little bit of neutral tint in there. Dark side of my tree. And then I'd say, well, that's it done. That's good. Now, the thing is, if you look at that, we're working on white paper, so it's really easy to get this wrong. You think, well, yeah, that's probably about right. This is way, way too light. Way, way too light. And if you keep it like that, you'll get that confetti look to your trees, which we don't want. And I'm just going to, can I do this? Ooh, this might be crazy. I'm just going to take the feed and take the saturation out so you can see what the actual value is of this. I've got to remember where it was. Okay. And then I'm going to put my value scale next to it, because it's hard to see the value of light colours, definitely. Now, what is that, do you think? Oops. It's not an 8.5. I don't know, maybe it may be close to an 8.5 actually. Yeah, I mean that's kind of an 8.5. Way, way too light. And it won't be, if we make our trees that value, we won't bring out the white of our church, which is the main effect I want to get. Okay, let's switch this back. Hopefully I can get it. Right, where are we? Okay, so what do we actually want on this light side of the tree? Now, it really helps to know, and some people make charts of this, but I think you can basically remember. When you get paint out of the tube, it's really useful to know what is the value of that paint when it's, you know, pretty much with no water in it whatsoever. And for reds, straight out of the tube, they're usually about 5. So that's what we should be having for the light side of our tree. almost pure paint in there, which is going to be tricky for us because we're going to be working wet in wet, so which is why we might have to do a couple of layers. So that's what the colour should be, and you can see almost immediately how much richer it is. And it looks, again, we're working against the white paper, it just looks too dark for the light side or something, but it isn't. And let's put in just a little bit of dark burnt sienna. Just put in some shadow side of that tree. This is quite cheap paper, so it dries quite quickly. And that is much more of the effect we want to get. A bit of water there just to soften those edges. I've got to stop. I do like fiddling with these trees, right? That is more of what we want. And if you see, now we've put this one next to that one, it looks, you know, it's just night and day. So we've got to be careful. And so we have the red trees. Let's just do a couple of colours for the other ones. We've got red trees, we've got these nice orangey ones, we've also got the green ones, and they're all going to have to be this nice value 5. Let me just flick that over again. I quite enjoy doing this stuff. Colour correction, take the saturation out. Yeah. And I don't know if that is 5, might be a bit lighter. Yeah, it's a bit lighter, but it's getting there. It's getting there. We probably don't want to go any darker, because if we go darker, we're going to start losing the chroma of the colours. So we've got to be careful and bear that in mind. Right, bring it back again. Okay, just have a look at the chat. Hi Maggie, nice to see you. Okay, so that's our trees. Let's just do a couple more colours for the other trees and try and get that light side of the tree way down that value scale, and you get the intensity. You lose the intensity of the colour, you lose the chroma if you go lighter. All right, so what should we do? It's kind of an orange. Okay, I'm going to start with a little yellow, a little bit of vermilion. It takes us to an orange. I'm going to put in a little bit of yellow ochre. Yeah, that looks good. And that's almost, I've got a damp brush, but that's almost straight from the tube consistency. I'm going to add a little bit of water, not to make it lighter, just to make the paint flow a bit, because I want to be able to push it around. Yeah, and you can see the value's okay. It's probably a little light, but we're going to lose a little bit of the intensity of the colour. Oh, it's a terrible tree. Make it a little more irregular. Yeah. Nice intense colour, maybe a little light, but that's as good as we can get. Let's put in some shadow side, a little bit of neutral tint. Just put in a bit of shadow. You might need to go a little dark, although maybe not. Really, I'm going to keep these by the side of my painting when I'm doing the real thing, just to remind me where I want to be. So that's our orange one. Let's put a green one in the middle. And I'm just going to clean my palette a little bit. Now I'm hoping to get this done in 2 hours or so. So we're going to be streaming for 2 hours. It's a complicated painting. And I don't know if you recognize this, the reference I put on the web page is actually slightly bigger than this, and I think the composition is actually slightly nicer. There's a tree out there, but I painted it a while ago, and it took me forever. So I wanted something I could get done in 2 hours. All right, let's just try a green tree. Now this green, this is another thing that can catch us out. I don't have a green on the palette, and part of that is because the greens we see in nature are very, very yellow, and a lot of the greens you get from tubes are very, very blue. So if you start using greens from, they're very non-natural looking colors. So if you're painting a lot of trees and grass and things, the colours are often much, much yellower than you think. And you can use Chroma Magic for this as well. Actually, let me just flip over and show you. Let me flip on to here. Apologies if I stutter a bit. I haven't done this in a while. As I said, screen, that's what I want. Here we go. Right, so let's click on, actually there's a bit of grass here. It looks very green, this bit of grass, yeah. So let's just click on it. Now, it's very bright because this reference is very bright. It's right over on the right-hand side, high chroma, but it's actually a yellow. I mean, we look at it and we think it's green, but it's actually a yellow and fairly light, but kind of, you know, in between our foliage colours and the lightest value we can get. So, and I think when you see it isolated, it's almost impossible. Yeah, I can just about see that colour now. Now I've isolated it. Let's look at this bit over here. This is also grass. And this is actually, it's a yellow, but it's a very orangey yellow. And again, looking at that colour, once you've isolated it, I can just about see it now. The other thing about that colour, it's quite a way down the chroma scale. It's not a bright colour, that one. And let's look at these green trees. The greenest bit I think is probably in here. Yeah, so this is it's a green, but it's a green yellow. It's GY means green yellow. It's a very yellowy green. And the bluish things we have are probably in the shadows. Yeah, so this is an actual green. Very way down the value scale, almost as dark as we can get. And it goes blue. Well, they'll go blue in the shadows. That shadow is actually a yellow. I mean, I could do this for hours. I'll stop doing that because I'll probably bore you senseless. But I think it's, I learned so much just from looking at the references, trying to guess what the colour is, and then clicking on it and finding out exactly what the colour is. I learned an awful lot from that. Okay, let me just switch back to overhead. There we go. Those trees are looking pretty nice now, aren't they? Just switch back to my chat. Hi, Debbie. Yes, it is amazing seeing the trees side by side, yeah. And it's nice comparing them to the original ones. And if we do these lovely rich colours and then we have the darks next to them, it just makes it's the richness of the colours in here. It's I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it will make a good painting. Okay, let's do this green. So it's going to be quite a yellow green, because I'm going to start with my yellow, and I'm going to put in, we could put in black. Actually, let me just show you what happens when I put in black. This blew my mind when I first did this. If you put black into yellow, maybe you all know this. I didn't know this when I tried it. You get a beautiful olive green. Oh, isn't that nice? Actually, that's probably, let's try that. Let's try that in here. Let's put in, no, let's do a separate one. Yeah, that looks nice. It's actually a little light, I think. Let's just intensify that a little bit. Oh, that's going to be too much. Da, da, da. There we go. Yeah, now that looks too dark, but I think that is probably about the right value. I'm kind of, this technique for the trees, actually, let me just tell you about that. I don't use your best sables for this. I used to use my best sables for this and I ruined them all. To get these lovely ragged edges, I kind of have to hold the brush almost completely vertically and kind of stab the paper. And it gives you these lovely organic marks. Let me just put it on zoom for you. Yeah, it gives you these lovely organic marks irregularly. I have trouble with trees. I tend to fiddle with them and they end up looking regular, like little balls. And we don't want that. Let's stick a bit of, I'm going to put a bit of neutral tint into this and a little bit of ultramarine because our shadows go slightly blue. A little bit of water, not to lighten it, just to get that paint to flow. There we go. I mean, they're not great trees, but I think you can get the idea of what we're trying to do. And let me just stick that back into grey mode. I just want to check the value on those trees. How are we doing for time? Oh, we've half an hour gone already. Goodness me. We could be here forever. I should have told people to bring snacks. Filters. Okay, let's take colour out. Yeah. Yeah. And they look kind of similar, actually, now, don't they? This one's a little lighter, but it's orangey, and I think they probably are just a little lighter. And if I get my value scale out, where are we? I'm going to have to do this and look at the screen at the same time, which is going to be weird. So is that a... I can't actually tell. It's slightly lighter. Yeah, it's tough to keep the intensity of the colour and get the value down. Yeah, just a little lighter. So we should be here. We're kind of a little lighter, but that's okay. We're definitely not up here, which this one was, which is good. And if we want to get a little more value difference, we can layer over again at the end. We'll see how it looks. Okay, let me put the saturation back. Close, just checking the chat. Good. Stream is still working. Check. I'm amazed everything has worked correctly. Okay, so I'm going to put that to one side, but keep it handy. Keep it handy. Right. Okay, so let's start. This is the scariest moment when you've got your paper in front of you and you have to put the first brush stroke down. Oh. I remember the very first watercolor class I went to, that was the first thing the teacher said. We were all sitting there with our sheets of paper, kind of terrified. And he said, that fear you feel looking at that blank piece of paper, that fear will never go away, however long you paint. And it is kind of true. Right, now I'm wondering if I need, I'm gonna work with this water. I think it's slightly orange, but I think it's fine. So we're gonna do our sky. And it's going to be pretty light, almost as light as we can get it. And I'm going to use cerulean. I'm not going to use any other colours. I'm just going to use cerulean in here. And I know, and we're going to change. I don't like this sky. It's horrible. So I'm going to simplify it. And we're not going to put in any shadows under the clouds. I don't want it to be busy. I actually want it to be quite plain up here, because this is the kind of the meat of the picture. So I'm going to redesign it. Make it not quite so busy, but this, you see this little blue bit that goes behind that steeple? We're going to keep that bit. We want a little bit of blue to bring out that white of the steeple. So we're going to wet the paper, and then we're going to get some cerulean, and it's not going to be, you know, pretty watery, but enough that you can see the colour. This is actually quite dark in here. It's about a 5. We're going to keep it. We're going to push it up the value scale. So let's wet the paper, and I'm going to try and keep water out of the steeple, because I'm just going to paint the water just around that. I may well go into it. I'll try not to. I'm going to just be carefully going around that bit, and we can put the water down into the mountains as well. Okay, and then we're going to drop the colour into it. And it will go probably places you don't want it to go, but try and resist the urge to put the brush back into it, unless your brush is very, very dry. Okay, so I'm going to make sure, I'm going to be talking a bit, so I'm just putting water on so it doesn't dry out before I get a chance to get some paint on there. Right, okay, a little bit of cerulean. Or a little bit of cobalt if you haven't got cerulean. We could knock this back a bit, just take a bit of the chroma out, but I think this picture can cope with it. Just a little test. Yeah, maybe a little stronger than that. Not too strong. We are going into wet paper, so it's gonna dilute a little bit. Okay, about that. Nice and watery. I'm gonna do this bit behind the steeple first. Go through one side, and this is going to go fast. And I'm going to put a bit up here, and a little bit over there, and a bit here, maybe a little bit. Right, okay. I'm going to wash my brush. It's going all over the place. It's going to look terrible. And I've left a lot of white. I don't want little cotton wool balls in here. It's another thing. I'm going to try and demo this. I'm going to really wring out the water. Dabbing it on a paper towel doesn't really work, so I'm going to wring out the water from the brush with my fingers. This is a really dry brush now. And I'm going to go back in, just tidy up some of these edges, make some changes. Actually, I could have done a bit more in there. Okay. I'm hoping it's not drying. So I'm going to do exactly what I said I wasn't going to do. Hopefully this won't ruin it. Okay, just to bring out that steeple. I'm just going to change. I've got a very dry brush, picking up just little bits of colour here and there, just making these clouds slightly more interesting shapes. Okay, just make that. Yeah, no, and I don't want isolated clouds. Actually, maybe is that too stripy? I'm leaning back, and I find that even if you think this sky has gone terribly wrong, by the time you get all the rest of it in, this will be pushed back and you won't notice any horrendous things. I don't like it. It's kind of stripy, isn't it? But it's there now. Also, I was talking too much. Yeah, it's dry now. So that's what we've got to live with. It's okay. I can live with that. I can live with that. Okay. Right. Let's move on to the mountains. Now we're going to have a bit of bleeding in here, but I think that's fine. And we want to come down to the top of the foliage. And these mountains here in the reference, they're very, very dark. I mean, this is kind of, I know, a 3 or maybe even, oh, dropped a brush. 3 or a 2. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's really dark. We're not going to make those dark. We're going to bring them up in value a fair amount. We do want them to, this value change across the spire to show up. So maybe, you know, a 5 or a 6, kind of a mid value, just above a mid value. So let's do that. I want a slightly bigger brush than that, I think. Here we go. Right. And what colour are we going to do them? Well, they're going to be kind of blue, maybe a blue-grey. I'm going to use some ultramarine. I want to keep these fairly neutral because we've got all the colour here. We don't want the mountains to start fighting for our attention. So this is ultramarine. Let's do brown now. Ultramarine and burnt sienna to a bluish grey. And that looks fearfully dark. I'm just going to put it on a swatch of paper and show you. That looks kind of dark. But I think once it's on, it won't be. Okay. I wonder if I've got enough now. Let's mix up a little bit more. A little bit more, not too blue, not too brown. Okay, okay. Here we go. I'm going to start just making sure it's a nice crisp edge next to that steeple. We've got a shadow on this side, but okay. Then I'm going to come across, and the point of my brush is kind of at the edge, the sharp edge. I'm holding my brush perpendicular. And I'm going to bring another brush in now, and I'm going to fade out. This is just a damp brush, not too much water on it. I'm just going to pull that across that edge, a little bit more water than that, just so I fade out that go around that roof. And then I'm going to put a little bit of spray on it to give it some texture. I probably overdo this slightly, but I do like the effect it has. Right, let's carry on through. We'll probably come back and put some more colour on that. I just want to get this top edge done. And the bit around the stem, I've got to be careful here because this is white. We want this edge to show. There's a little bit of light there, isn't there? A little bit of lighter green. Okay, just soften that edge. Let's go across. Oh, the paint is drying very fast today. It's not, I thought there might be a little more bleeding in there, but there isn't. Now this may look incredibly dark. And you'll think, well, this will never work. But I guarantee once we've got all the foreground stuff in, it will push back. Yeah, I'm wondering whether this should have been slightly bluer as well. Never mind. Never mind. It's down now. Right, now this one over here, I'm just going to add in a little bit more water. It's slightly further away. I'm going to add in a little bit more blue as well, I think, just to make that slightly lighter. Now, one thing we could have done actually here is you can see there's some. Actually, let me finish this before I start rabbiting on about something else. Okay, and then another brush that I'm holding in this hand. Okay. All right. Now at this point, I'm not feeling confident, I have to say, but I'm trusting that my perception is right, my assessment of the values is right, and it's all going to work out in the end. I've got faith. If you watch any of Joseph Zabukovich's videos, he often goes on about having faith. Okay, how's that looking? Oh, it looks pretty terrible actually, doesn't it? Yeah, but never mind. It will look, once we put the first layers on, it will look very flat. So we have to know that ahead of time and not worry about it. Right, okay, mountain done, sky done. And just putting the mountains in has pushed that sky back, and you don't notice that the shapes aren't quite what I wanted. Right, now let's put in the shadow on this church. This shadow here, and that side of the steeple. Now that is, I'm going to say that's about a mid-value grey. If you look at the reference and we compare the base, it's almost the same as the it's up a little bit. It's a mid-value, maybe slightly below on this reference. We're going to pull that up a bit, so probably make it, yeah, pretty much the same value as the mountains, and we're going to make it slightly bluer as well. Let's take a little bit of that, and what should we use? Let's use some cerulean for this because it's my favorite blue. Not pure cerulean because that will be too blue. I'm just checking the cameras. Yes, everything's working. I have a fear of sallying on and the camera's fallen off or something. At least on Zoom people can shout at me that something's gone wrong. I have to be attentive in these streams. Okay, right, and I want just a little bit of water just to make it flow. I think my brush had a bit of green on it. Okay, let's remix that. I think it had a bit of yellow on it. Just a little bit, it's a bit of cerulean, a little bit of burnt sienna. A bit more cerulean. I don't want it to be brown. I don't want it to be bright though. Okay, that kind of colour. So that was pure cerulean. Now we're coming down a bit. Right, now I'm going to rest my hand and my little finger on, my head might get in the way for this, I apologise. And just a pure wash on the shadow side. Have I wiggled? I think my steeple's got a bit wiggly. And the edge I'm worried about is this edge going from the light to the shadow. The back edge is, yeah, doesn't really matter that. And when I'm painting, if I can push the bristles right down to the ferrule, obviously not when you're doing detail, I can, right, yeah. I think that's probably okay. And I'm just going to put a couple of shadows underneath these bits. We'll probably come back and do some more work here and put the windows in, but let's do that for now. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just looking at that. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Now that looks okay. Let's do the side. And I'm pushing the bristles down, the brush down, so that almost, you know, it's flat against the paper, and you get a nice even application of paint that way. Oh yeah, there's this little back hut here. All right, and just make that edge slightly ragged. There we go. And one final thing is this shadow under this roof. It's quite an important thing. I'm just looking back. Yeah, I think he's looking okay. I think he's looking okay. Now, let me just look at the reference. Shadow color is, sorry, Elizabeth. Yeah, is cerulean and a little bit of burnt sienna. So it's like a grayish blue. And it's just above the mid value. So that shadow comes here. They're very versatile, these brushes, I have to say. There we go. Nice. Oh, let's just leave it at that, shall we? Okay, is there anything? No, I think that's it. That's all we have for this. All right. I'm a bit annoyed that my spire went a bit wonky, but anyway, it is now. Yes, yeah. Just adding the background mountains really brings the steeple into 3D. Yeah, it's all these relationships. Yeah, just, I mean, I actually didn't go very vertically there. I might touch that up. Yeah, just this front edge just brings it forward. Those relationships, we're going to be using that a lot with the trees, so we'll have the light side of the tree here, but what will actually define it is that shadow color going in behind it, and hopefully that will work. Right, okay, that should be fairly dry. I'm just looking at the time. We're going to put in some washes for the trees, and we're going to do it wet and wet. I'm hoping this will work. Now, the first time I painted this, I didn't do it this way, and afterwards I thought, yeah, I should have done it differently. So, but I mean, I'm hoping we're in experimenting mode. Let's see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? So we're going to wet our paper just like we did for our sky, and then we're going to drop in our really bright oranges, greens, reds. So this one's going to be that really bright red. This will be the orange. This will be the green over the whole thing, and then we'll let that dry, and then we'll come back and put in the darks. It won't look convincing at this point. It will look flat because we're only putting in one value, so don't expect it to look like trees at this point. Right, now I'm not going to pre-mix the colors. I dropped my brush, didn't I? Sorry, my head will get in the way. Right, let's get some water, and I'm going to come, well, we can go, yeah, we can put foreground to do. Let's be careful around this roof and here, because I don't want to go over that. But the rest, hopefully be nice and damp. Actually, I'll leave that side because I suspect by the time I've mixed and torqued, that will dry. You don't need a huge brush for this. Right, let's start with the red because I like putting on red. And it's going to be as pretty, this is vermilion, as intense as we can get it. And it's going to spread, which will be fine. I want it to spread. We'll define the edges using the darks. Right, it's this one here, isn't it? So it's going to spread, so I'm not going up to the pencil lines. Let's come down here. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit of red. It's just some little flecks of it. A little bit of red just on the side, just to bring out that roof. Okay, right, that doesn't look like anything, does it? That should be okay. Is there any other red? Not really, actually. Let's do some orange. So my yellow ochre, a little bit of vermilion, and as intense, as little water as I can get away with. You will need a little bit, because actually no, actually we've got wet paper, haven't we? So it'll probably be fine. Hopefully this is still wet. We've got a dark tree in front there, so we can go through that. Just looking down here. Let's put a bit in here. Ah, see, my paper's just dried a little bit there. And I want all these values to be similar. I don't want it to look three-dimensional at all at this point. I'm kind of looking at the reference. So that's a dark tree, there's a little bit of orange in here. And I'm tempted to say you can't go wrong at this point, but we all know with watercolor painting you can go wrong at a moment's notice. And this is a bit of orange. Actually, let's just vary that colour a bit. Maybe a bit too much orange. A little bit of yellow in there just to vary that a little bit. There we go. Yeah, I mean, that looks terrible, doesn't it? A bit more yellow. I didn't wet that bit, did I? Oh, I should put the greens in, sorry. Yes. Getting obsessed with orange. Let me just pick up a little bit of that. Got a bead, I don't want that to dry. Right. Just going to give that a bit of spray. Mainly just to keep it wet, to be honest, right? And some green again. There's our trees. We want a green that's, you see, it's not quite as dark because I have it like this. So a little bit of yellow and a little bit of neutral tint or a little bit of black will also give you a good colour. And right, it looks very dark on the palette. Okay, I might try just putting in a few edges here. But when I get into the middle of it, I'm pushing those bristles right down to the ferrule, covering as much ground. There's a little diagonal thingy. I don't know what it is in the reference, but I thought it was a nice feature. There we go. Yep, they look terrible. It should look terrible. I'm just looking at the reference. Is this one in here? I'm putting the paint on. What else do we have? We have this little thing over here. I don't really care about what's going on over here because this isn't where the action is. Just looking a little bit, just a little bit in there. There we go. Got a little bit of dribblage. Pick up the dribblage. I know that's a dark tree. Let's actually put in some colour. I'm going to put that dark tree in later. Let's put a little bit of colour in there. Doesn't really matter what it is. And a bit of green in there. And I'm mainly worried about getting an even value across these trees. Actually, I'm going to cheat and take the saturation off again. Ah, I discovered a new trick. Yeah, look at that, it goes flat. Oh, pretty flat. Anyway, that's exactly what I want. Exactly what I want. Okay, good. I don't think the colours are quite as intense as we need, but we can layer over and intensify them a little bit. Okay, let's do the right hand side. And again, the right hand side is also, I'm not all that bothered about this right hand side. It's kind of, here is it's the main event. And if we do paint it slightly more loosely over here, I think it can actually add to what's going on. Now I should say at this point, if I was painting for myself and not yapping on all the time, I would have probably taken this down into the foreground. We're kind of going step by step. Okay, just gives me a bit of time to do some yapping and then do some painting. Right, so what do we have? It's kind of a little yellowy orange. I think I need to mix a little bit more. Yellowy orange and yellowy green. Okay, a little bit of yellowy orange in here. A little bit of green here and there. A little bit here. I'm just being careful around this. Oh, it's not dark enough, is it? Come on, clamp. Not dark enough. I think that's slightly browner. No, that's not quite the colour. Just want to bring that value down a bit. And I know there's some up there, but I think we're going to do that later. Right, a little bit of green. A little bit of green. I'm quietly confident at this point. That can be a dangerous state of mind to be in, because then you get overconfident and then it all goes terribly wrong. Just put a little bit in front of that hot. Okay, put some more colour on there. I'm going to actually take that colour out of here, because it's going to have to go quite dark back there. Put in a bit. I'm kind of destroying my tree shape, so that's okay. So I'm softening these edges. I've got a clean brush. I just dab it a couple of times on a piece of paper towel, and I don't go back into the paint very much. I'm kind of just wetting the paper right next to the paint. Sometimes I just the tip of the brush just tickles into the paint, and then the pigment just flows out onto the wet paper. Okay, a little white bit there. Let's just put some colour in there. It's just, I don't really need to do this. It's just annoying me. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to suggest we put the foreground on. We're going to leave the reflections till the end. So we're going to put the light colour of the foreground on, and this piece, this colour in here, which is kind of a slightly above mid value grey, and then we'll, at the end, we'll layer on the reflections. And then I think we'll take a 5-minute break. I can have a little bit of a walk around and finish my coffee, and then we'll come back and then we'll put in the darks, and hopefully it will all come to life. Oh, we haven't done the roof. Right, so this foreground, it's kind of a green, and it's a greenish yellow here, and then it goes into kind of a very pale low chroma orange. Let's just mix up that colour. And it's fairly light, but I don't want it to be too light. So that orange colour, let's start with some burnt sienna. Let's put it in here. Now that's not going to be right. That's too brown. It's too orange, I think. Let's put in some yellow ochre. Let's put in some yellow ochre and just see what that looks like. That's probably not too bad, but I think it's too bright. I'm just going to add in a teensy bit of ultramarine just to take the brightness out. It might shift the hue a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Can you see the difference? Yeah, it's a much more subtle. This is a bit in your face, that colour. I'm going to add in a bit of yellow as well. I think that might be slightly too brown. This isn't crucial. If we get the value right on this, which is quite a light value, what's that? About a 7, maybe? All right, I need more perching places here. Need more perching places, right. And there's a little bit of green in here. And we're just going to put in the light bits, and we're going to paint through the darks. Is that going to be too light? Too dark? Yeah, we didn't really go dark enough in there. Well, that was my experiment. I'm not sure it worked. I don't want to go into the water. And at this point, a softening brush is useful. I'm going to get a damp brush, just dab it on a paper towel a couple of times and just drag it along the edge to soften. I don't want a hard edge going in here. I do actually want a hard edge there though. Okay. Again, I'm using the point at the hard edge to do these crisp edges. Now while I'm here, it's now being too light. Yeah. It's an experiment, Michele. It's an experiment. Don't get too head up about things. And if these colours blend into each other, so much the better. Let's put out. I've got 2 brushes. No, 2. No, hang on. Which brush is that? I don't know which brush I'm using. It's not a very bright green, but I think if I make it too bright, it will. I'm going to go over. I know this is actually foreground colour, but it's kind of rock colour too. We're not putting any shadows on. This is just our base colour. And maybe a little bit of spray just to put a bit of texture in there. Maybe a little bit of colour on these. And these rocks are actually slightly greyer, aren't they? And the thing is, my softening brush gets mixed up in my painting brush, and you have paint everywhere. Okay, no, it's looking terrible. It's don't look at this and try and evaluate it at this point, because it will look it is not the point where it comes alive. Hopefully in the next stage it will come alive, she says, with hopefully. Right, I'm just going to put a grey wash in here. So some ultramarine, a little bit of burnt sienna to make it a kind of slightly bluish grey, and just put this in. We could have softened the edges here. We're going to put rocks around here. Oh, it's got a little bit of bleeding. That's good. I think a little bit of bleeding is fine. And yeah, I can come down a bit. We've got this dark edge here. I'm just looking for any white bits that I don't want to paint over, but I don't think there are any. This looks terrible, doesn't it? What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, I'm maybe rushing this a bit too much. I kind of want to get on to the next bit. Just a little Okay. We're going to have to intensify, and we've got a big shadow in here. That's fine. I think that value is okay. That might be a little light. This one's okay. Yeah, we're gonna layer over this. We can intensify that. It's gonna soften that edge down there. And I might leave that one. I don't think it really matters. Okay. Okay. Right, I'm going to take a 5-minute break. I'm back at 2:10. Just get a little bit of a walk around. I'm going to take a step back, take a look at it, get a glass of water, and then we'll start on phase 2. All right. See, I'm back in the mindset of, oh, I don't know if it's going to work. I'm not in the overconfident phase anymore. I'm back in the yeah, was this really a good idea? But it's that, I think that is actually the best mindset to be in, because it really, you don't get blasé about things, so you really concentrate on what's going on. Okay, but it's kind of where I wanted it to be at this stage. Thanks, Mary. Yes, well, I see you. I don't like videos when people, they prance on and they just tell you, well, do this and this, and it's easy, and look at me. I don't think painting's like that. Painting is just lurching from one crisis to the next. Sargent was right when he said watercolor is making the best of an emergency, and if Sargent can say that, I think I can say it too. Okay, I'll let the stream keep going, but I will be back in a few minutes. Just giving the palette a little bit over tidy. It will give it a chance to dry as well. We want it to be fairly dry to put the darks on. Well, gonna check the stats. I have this button that says stream is healthy. Jolly good. Okay, good. Great, good. All right. I'm just going to show you what we're going to do, what I'm going to do next week. Slightly different. Almost the opposite. It's still a landscape, but it's a very, very different colour scheme. With a whole new set of problems. Let me just go through my references. Hopefully it's here. Yeah, it's this one. Yeah, snow. I'm going to paint snow. This one. Lots of greys. Lots of pretty high key greys and blues and the odd pop of, it's probably quite a grey brown in there and some nice texture. These dark accents. I think this will make a nice painting. I like it because the dark accents, they kind of, you can follow them all the way through the scene. Even the background mountains, they connect onto this, so you get this lovely patchwork of darks through the middle. Yeah. So that's next week. And I should just do a little shout out. I'm doing these live streams because we finished classes and it was just before Thanksgiving, and I wasn't going to start a whole set of classes between Thanksgiving and New Year because, you know, people are doing things. So this is why I'm doing these live streams, just to keep me in practice and just to do a couple of free things in between. And the classes start again on January the 4th. And I know some of you have signed up. If you'd like to do a full 6-week session with me, I'd love to see you. I've been away from teaching for a year or so, and we just had an absolute blast. It was such a wonderful group of people. I'd forgotten how much I enjoy. I just enjoy painting with other people. It's one of my great joys in life. Okay. Oh, so Donna said the subtle but interesting sky. Thank you. Yes, I think it is kind of working well. Yeah, and it's all the edges have softened out, and it's not quite the shape I would like it, but you know, I think it's okay. And once we put these darks in, I think it'll come into its own. And Donna says too, watercolor always goes through an adolescence before it comes together. Yes, it does. Yeah, and it's like you have to get about 3/4 of the way through before it starts coming together. I actually wondered whether I could. There's some people paint in the opposite direction. They do dark to light rather than light to dark. I've been tempted to try and do that and see how differently things come out. Okay, right. I'm just going to show you. I haven't done all of the reference paintings for the next set of classes, but the one I was really enjoy. I've done one, and so I don't usually do animals in classes because animals are really tricky. You've really got to get the drawing right. But there was a sort of a clamour for doing an animal, so we did a beautiful tabby cat, and it was tricky. There was lots of wet and wet, lots of soft edges, lost edges. The drawing has to be good, and by God, I mean, I was absolutely blown away how people tackled it. So I mean, so we're going to do more animals. So we're going to do a cat. So I've done the cat. I just love this. I just loved. Oh, let me just pop him out a bit. I just look at these beautiful colours, the sort of rainbow colours in the greys, these beautiful soft edges. It's lovely precision in the head, just lovely chin shadow. I just really enjoyed painting. I'm really looking forward to doing that with people next time. Right, let's get going. Now, one thing we need to put in, because it's going to be an important reference point, is the roof. And the value of the roof is going to be we're going to key the darks. And if you look at the roof, it's almost the same value as the darks in the trees. So we're going to put that in next, and that will be our kind of reference value. So let's do that first. And we're not going to do anything fancy with that, just a plain wash over the roof. And it's kind of like, it's a dark greyish blue. So we're going to use a trusty mix of ultramarine and burnt sienna. Okay, not too much water because we want it to be quite dark. If it comes out too light, we can wash over it afterwards, but I'd rather I didn't have to do that. Just a tad more water, just to make the paint flow. Actually, just have some more in there. I know it's only a small area, but I do want to get it done in one. Right, okay. Just checking everything. All right, here we go. Yes, he is dry. I'm putting my little finger down to steady the brush. I want to get this to be nice and crisp on the edges. Again, when I can, I'm putting that brush down right to the ferrule. Using the edge of the brush where I can to get those straight edges. That's not very straight. And across the bottom. Now I'm just looking at that value. I think that value is good. It's pushing everything back. It's making everything else look flat, which is fine because we're going to go in with the darks. My paint maybe was a little thick. There's a little bit of variation in that wash, but it's okay. It adds a bit of interest. And I think, yeah, that little back hut bit actually got darker walls, but I think we'll make it the same. And I know there's more detail we need to put on the church, like the windows and some shadows under things, but I just want to get this main dark in. There we go. Okay. Looks nice. Looking really dark, that, isn't it? Yes, which is good. Okay, right. Foliage time. I'm going to start on this right hand bit because it's not the main bit, so I'm going to have a bit of a practice here just to see how things need to change. So we've got to put in the darks, put some form into, we've got this little hut to do. I'm going to just leave that to the end. And also take this up a bit to try and indicate those trees back there. So we're going to go in with a dark green. I'm just going to use a slightly bigger brush. I'm going to use my 12 for this, I think. All right. Okay. Now I'm back in that phase of, I don't know if this is going to work. I might have to battle with this a bit. I'm starting with my yellow. I'm going to add in some neutral tint, which will make it an olive green. That's not dark. It needs to be pretty dark. All right. And do I want a bit more blue in that? I'm going to add in just a little bit more blue just to take it slightly bluer. I also don't want it too chromatic. I don't want it to be bright blue back there. Right, I'm going to get another brush handy to do some softening. All right, let's go in. Let's bring my reference over. Now, when we put the shadows in, the edges are going to define the trees. So I'm going to use this stabbing technique. Let's start here. Just to make the edges of these trees regular. This isn't the best brush to do this with, actually. The bristles are actually slightly too floppy. Right, and when that's in, oops, that helps if you actually use the fluffy end of the brush. Just going to soften this edge here. This is just water on this. And there's a little bit of dark in here. The light is coming this way, so all our shadows are going to be, is right, isn't it? Yes, on the right. A little bit of colour in there. I think I've done the old trick of painting with the softening brush. And they're looking bright. Put a little bit of colour. I'm going to noodle quite a lot with this until it looks right. This bit is not going to be a case of deciding what to do, doing it, and it works. So I may noodle quite a lot here. This is why I'm using this side as a practice. Soften a bit more then. Let's put in some darks behind here. I'm going to wet this bit. I'm going to take the colour up and start going back into the background, so it's all going to be less defined. So I'm going to start working wet and wet. Okay, it's starting to come together. These are still looking bright, but that's fine. We can come back and glaze over those. Fingerworks too. I'm wondering whether that's a bit too. Just putting in these darks, they've got kind of tiers of trees going back. I'm actually going to put in just a little bit of extra colour. You see, these are looking terrible, but I'm deciding not to worry about that right now. Just going to put in a little bit of brown, not too bright. Just shift that red a bit, just a little bit of blue, just to take the punch off it. Just use them, it's a bit too bright maybe. To get this to look right, you have the values are actually pretty close. It's getting there. Still too, the value, the change between the values is still too high. Just softening up some edges. I'm going to put a bit more colour and some yellow ochre just to bring the see how this looks. And which brush am I using? Bit of dark there just to bring out that side of that building. Not happy with that at all. This is always the danger of a live stream. It may not work. I think my green is just too green. All right, now I'm getting to the point, so this can be a teachable moment. Everything's a teachable moment. It's not working to my satisfaction, and so your first instinct is to meddle with it and fiddle with it until it does, but in practice I find that if you leave it and come back to it later, often it's not quite as bad as you think it was, as you thought it was to begin with. And once you've gone away from it and you've done something else, you can come back to it with fresh eyes. Okay, I'm going to put some spray on that. See, I'm actually going to step back and see what we're doing here. Maybe that's not so bad. One thing that is so the roof value is kind of merging into the trees. Well, let's do the rest of them and see how bad that looks afterwards. Okay, let's just catch up with the comments. Oh, Maggie says, well, I thought I'd try painting along, but my mountains bled into my sky and made a muddy mess. So I'll have to accept it's not a viable option for me. I'm sorry about that, Maggie. It does happen, yes. I think, yeah, what paper are you using? Because I find that Fabriano, it does dry quite fast. I'm actually stepping back. Okay, that's not so bad. Oh, come on, Michele. You're being too hard on yourself. Okay. Well, it looks good from a distance. Right, let's go into these. Again, I'm going to be noodling quite a lot. I think that's just about okay. It's looking a bit... okay, let's do this one. Right. I'm going to do this big front green tree. I'm going to work out which brush is which. And I think my green, I tried to punch the chroma out of it, but I think it's still a bit too green. I think that's partly why I don't like it. So let's mix up something that isn't quite so in your face green. I mean, it's not a highly chromatic green. A bit more neutral tint in there. Should it have been more blue? Let's try this. It's just a little swatch. Right. And let's do this tree here first. I'm going to put a little bit of blue into that, kind of a conifer. I'm going to use point of the brush. Just make it slightly irregular. And leave just a couple of gaps. Just to give it a little bit of value variation. And there's some stuff down the bottom which I can't really see what it is, but there's some shapes down here. Which I'm just gonna dot in. Okay, now that looks very stark, which is fine. I'm just gonna damp brush, clean damp brush, just dropping some water in, just provide a little bit of value variation. I'm going to soften probably this right hand edge just slightly. I don't want it to look like it's been pasted on. A little bit of softening there. There's actually this little diagonal thing which I kind of like. Okay, you see that just that little bit of softening kind of helps, right? So let's put some darks on this tree. Got this little diagonal bit. And I'm actually going to wet the paper on this side so it blends. Okay. Okay, I'm using that stabbing technique. shadow. They come out a little bit, little bits of shadow, slightly more shadow down the bottom as there's less light. How's that looking? Slightly less shadow towards the top. Don't want to overdo this one. That's okay actually. I think it's kind of a weird shape, but you know, it's there now. Okay, I'm going to leave that one there. I think the values are good. Just checking the stream. Yes, good, good. All right, now this is actually tricky here. Let's put in some shadows on this one. And a little bit of red with a little bit of burnt sienna. I'll take the value down a little bit. It's just bits and bobs. Just to intensify that colour and kind of join. I want them to join together a bit. A little bit of colour in there. And then I'm getting through my brushes. Softening brush. I'm just really just painting water onto this. And something with the side of that church, which is the bit we made. I moved, if you followed along with the drawing video, I moved that tree out of it because it was covering up the edge of that building. It looks kind of nice actually. And can you see what I mean about these colours have to be intense, but they have to be quite dark. So, okay. Now, I might leave this one and put in this dark red here. Okay, let's put in that front dark tree. And what do you think about those darks? I think that's it. And this bit is kind of, it's pushed back a bit now. Okay, okay. I'm not quite as worried as I was. Still fairly worried. I'm going to intensify this red because this isn't as bright as it should be. So let's put on some red, and it's slightly pinkish, this red, so I'm going to mix up my vermilion and my permanent rose. I'm going to have darks behind there. I'm still going to use my stabbing technique. Let's go through that tree and some intensity there. Okay, and then let's darken this. It's almost black down the bottom, isn't it? So a little bit more permanent rose. We're going into the shadow, so it's going to be bluer. Right. I don't think that's going to be quite dark enough, but let's try this. Now I'm defining the edges of this orange tree when I'm down here. I'm going to soften those edges a little bit, I think. So it's a little bushy thing. Come in. How's that looking? That doesn't look too bad actually, right? Okay, and now it's going to soften this top bit. Give it a bit of structure. There isn't actually much structure in there, so I'm just making that up. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about this at the moment. This is weird. Just a little bit of softening. I don't want them to look separate. I want them to, at first glance, they look as though they're one thing. I don't want some more colour in there, I think. Let's just join that across. Okay. Just a little bit of softening, just so that goes into the shadow. Yeah, Yeah, by the time I get over here, I will probably have the hang of it all. Anyway. Just a little bit of dark. This is yellow ochre that's going in here. One thing, maybe I should put some darks behind them. It would help. A little bit of bush. That's not looking too bad, is it? It could still go darker down there, couldn't it? Let's go crazy. Let's go crazy. That's a bit better. That's a bit better. All right, now let's do this. This is a big dark one. I'm going to start the opposite direction. I want them to be green, but not really. There's not an awful lot of colour in there. So before I was starting with yellow and then adding in, now I'm going to start with the dark. And I thought that was a big tall tree. It's actually not. Well, I've made it a big tall tree. Stop talking because I'm concentrating. How's that look? That's not looking too bad. It's a bit chocolate box. Mind you, the whole reference is a bit chocolate boxy, isn't it? It's almost a little bit too twee. Water. Da, da. There's a bush down here, which I've kind of lost. Never mind. Hard edge there, which I want to lose. I'll probably put some more colour in that. Yeah, and things are blending together a bit better. Yeah, yes, yes. Okay, I'm getting the hang of it now. Late now. A bit late now. Okay. And when I'm over here, I'm not really looking for trees. I'm just looking for dark shapes. Let's put some dark back here. And my little stabbing technique. And these darks will define the shapes of the trees in front, and hopefully it'll be okay. Actually, that does kind of go into that one, doesn't it? Yeah, they're coming together. They could be a little. I think I was just a little bit too literal. We'll see how that goes. What are we doing for time? Oh my goodness, I've got to do the rest of it in 20 minutes. Okay, so I was a bit ambitious for this. Okay. Soften this a little bit. A little bit more yellow, just put some. What size do you print? Oh, it's a comment. Let's see. Carol says, what size do you print your photo references? So this is just letter size. But the aspect ratio is the same as the paper. So there's, yeah, the border's slightly bigger on the edges than it is on the. And this is just cheap glossy paper you can get from Costco. You can get about 100 sheets for 20 bucks. It's really good value and it's good paper. Let's just put some colour in there. Okay. And put these edges in. I have too many brushes on the go. Okay, I think. A little bit of softening that's going into the background. And the glossy paper is good because you print on matte paper and you just don't get the value range. And glossy paper just gives you that, you know, the really light lights and dark darks. Okay, right, I'm gonna stop that bit there. I think there's a lot more I could do, but I'm gonna stop it and then we're gonna move on and do this foreground bit. I'm hoping this is gonna go faster. Right, okay. Yeah, that's yeah. Right, okay. I'm going to leave these light bits. We may need to come back and just intensify that colour a bit, especially here, I think. But let's put in some shadow. So we have this really dark shadow here. Got this little strip of shadow, which is kind of one of my favourite bits in there. Just take that off. And then this is slightly in shadow, just this bank. So let's put that in. Let's do this one here. I clean all my brushes. And once that goes in, I think we'll have more of a sense as to how it's working. Okay, Maggie says, are you using Saunders watercolor? Oh, it's a nice paper. Yeah, I think it's slightly more absorbent. It's like Arches is really, really absorbent. It's a nice paper to learn on because the paper stays wet for such a long time. You don't have to motor along like a steam train. Sorry, I mixed my metaphors there. Saunders, yeah, it's one of those things that it depends on, you know, is the air humid, you know, what's the temperature. It's not like oil paint where it just kind of sits there. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened, Maggie. Right, let's do this shadow here. It's really, really dark and it's kind of brownish grey, and we're going to use some splatter in there. All right, gonna angle my hand around because I want the point of my brush to be at the hard edge. That didn't work very well. Okay. And now we're going to put some detail in, some rocks poking out and stuff. We can put those in afterwards, and we won't need too much detail. It's slightly browner towards the top, actually, doesn't it? Right, softening brush. Just going to soften that bottom edge because I'm not going to do very much with that right now. I just want to concentrate on this top edge. I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna just as it's poking its nose over the top, and then soften that whole top edge. And again, I'm kind of angling my hand around, so whoops, that's what happens when you have too wet a brush. Got blossoms in there. And a little bit of spray. I could have had a bit more blue in that shadow. Okay, let's put in some blue. Now, one thing I'm going to do here, there's one really important line in this. This line across here, where it goes from this sort of ripply bit into the reflections, really makes the whole thing convincing. I'm wondering whether to put it in now or later. Let's do it a bit later because I don't want to put in the reflections quite yet. But that's going to come across there. It helps if I mix my paint. Never mind, it's there now. I'm going to come down to the rocks and just leave that a little bit and put a bit of spray in. Okay, it's just my softening brush. It's going to soften a little bit. Right. Let's put in this bit here. Pick up a bit of this green. This little dark sliver on the back, and there's this little strip of light that goes across. And it brings out that piece of bank in front of it too. It's doing a lot of work, this little strip of dark. A little bit of grass down there. Yeah. Now it's looking pretty stark there, so I'm going to soften those edges a little bit. Soften those edges a little bit here. And I think we are going to have to put in some washes over that. A little bit of softening. I can't actually see that. I just don't want those edges to be quite as hard. All right, so let's put in a little bit. This is a little browner along here. A bit more burnt sienna in there. And it's not quite, so this is very dark over here. And this bit is not quite as dark. So I'm just going to, but it is dark towards the bottom. So I'm going to put in darks towards the bottom, just kind of putting on a little bit of paint and then water here, letting that flow upwards. And then if I want it to be a little darker, which I think I probably do, I'm going to drop some colour into it. Give it a bit of texture, a sense of some divots, little indentations. Is that's that bush there. Okay, a little bush. It's probably not dark enough. How's that? That's not bad actually, is it? Is it looking hella dark? Right, a little bit more. Just going to bring these out a bit more. There's that little bush. Actually, there's some darks that go back. No, I won't do those yet. Just going around some rocks where they're going to be. Oh, hang on, it's not grass, that's rock. Grass. Okay. All right. I'm going to motor along a bit now, I think, because we're all going to starve to death if I carry on like this. And going to be slightly looser back here because I'm going to have a bit of fun. But I am going around the back of these rocks. So the shapes of the back of these rocks and the shapes of the front of the rocks are the two most important things. If you get those things right, what goes on in here is really not that important. Okay. Oh, I'm not sure about this. Oh, Debbie says, oh, Debbie has to go. Never mind. It's nice to see you. Oh, thanks. Yes. No, you are signed up, Debbie. Yes. Thanks for that. All right. It's not looking too bad, she says. Hopefully. If I say it often enough, it might actually become true. Oh, that's it dried. Well, I'm still not highly confident. I'm at the stage where I'm thinking, just please don't let it be a complete embarrassment. And I'm just going to do some rocks whilst we're down here, I think. Now the rocks, the light's coming from this side, so the shadows are going to be on the right-hand side. And I'm going to draw these in fairly crisply. And I'm always surprised how little you have to do to make them look like rocks. And there's a lot of, one mistake you can make is to put in too many, they're not round rocks, there are a lot of hard angles on them. The tops of them are often round, but the bottom and the back, they're often very hard, sharp, what do I mean? Hard-edged? Hard-edged. So I'm just putting in the shadows around the back. And the shadow at the bottom of one rock will define the front of the next one. Lots of straight lines. How's that looking? It's not so bad. Not great, it's not so bad. Not so bad. They're going to get slightly smaller as they go into the distance. I'm not really looking at the reference for this. I'm just kind of making it up. We may not put, there's a lot of rocks along there. Soften this top edge. Well, I said this was going to be challenging at the start. It's certainly been challenging. I have to say, I don't think I would ever do this in a class. There's just too much going on, and it's kind of hard to break it down. Right, what's this? Is this a rock? I don't know what that is. I made those too regular. I think they're okay. I think they're okay. Okay, I'm going to leave those rocks. Let's these ones over here. And again, so the shadows are going to be on this side again, because that's where the light's coming from the left. And if I were taking a bit more time over this, I'd maybe soften some of these edges on the rocks just to give them a little curve. I'm giving them all hard edges at the moment. Hoping that's going to read okay. Okay, all right. Let's put in a big one here. Then a little one. Okay, we're going to have a lot of colour over that. So, all right. Okay. All right, let's try and pull this together. We've got 5 minutes left. Well, I'm not going to finish in 5 minutes, so I'm going to carry on. Let's finish off this church because it's looking a little bald. Oh, actually, let's do this little hut because it's just standing out. We just need a wash over the roof and then some slightly darker walls. It's not the main character, so I'm going to mix up a bluish grey just for the roof. Will that be dark enough? Let me just look at that. I think that's probably okay. And then a slightly thicker mix. This will bleed a bit, but for the walls. I don't know. Put a bit of shadow under that roof. Yeah, okay. Right, let's do these windows. Now, windows are really tricky. Oh, Mimi's left comments. Mimi, I made a mess of it. But learned a lot. Well, that's good. I mean, this is what it was meant to be. A little bit over my head. Yeah, this is how I like it. This is a tough one. As I said, I would not do this in a class. I mean, there's just so much going on. But hey, it's fun to do tough things. So you do learn a lot, even if you don't end up with something that you're going to put on your wall. Right, windows. Now the trick, well, not really a trick. What we have to be careful of here is not to make these too dark and not to make them too well defined. Do I like this? I'm not sure. I'm just looking back at it. So we want a grey, but we don't want it to be too dark because they will really catch the eye and they'll stand out and will look as though they're kind of pasted on. So I've got a grey that's kind of that colour, which is obviously much lighter than they are in the reference. And I'm just going to put a slight mark at the top, and then I'm going to a few little dabs, leave a few gaps. Now these arches, I'm just going to, I know they've got this kind of surround indentation, so leaving some gaps, and I'm not defining the bottom. I might even soften those a bit. I don't know, I think it's okay. And this one here, I'm going to leave the graphite where it is, I think, and just add in, just extend that down a little bit. And they kind of read okay now. They look as though they're more defined than they actually are. I've messed up so many windows in my time. Right, let's put this one in, and it's the same, kind of the same dealio. I'm not going to define them completely. Leave some white paper showing. Yep, okay. And this one, it might be even too dark, even now. And there's this doorway, slightly dark a bit there. We didn't use that shadow colour for the side here, which we should have done. Then these ones, I'm going to make these slightly lighter. They're in shadow, they're not going to be quite as well defined. I might use a softening brush on these. How does that look? Maybe not. Maybe not. Let's see what it looks like. We're in experimenting phase, so it's fine. It is fine. Just a few little windows along here. This might be too much. I don't want it to look too overly defined. A little bit more water, and a little bit, there's this shadow underneath this roof, and just this little sliver of light or white lighter stuff. I'm not putting a continuous, I'm leaving little gaps. Not too much. Don't like that. Don't like that at all. I'm going to just soften up that line a bit. That's a bit better. That's a bit better. Okay, there's a little bit of dark from across here. And this dark will define the top of these bushes as well. So I'm going to make the underside choppy. And there's a little bit of dark. How does this going to be kind of straight, really? There's kind of, I'm just looking for shapes at this point. It's just general gubbins to make it look like there's something going on in there. All right, there's a little bit more blood. I just want to put the shadows on the side. I think this is going to be roughly, it is roughly the right colour. It's good. Comes down. Just some shapes to make it look as though there's something going on. There we go. Yeah, I think that's okay. All right. A little bit of shadow under here. This is ever so slightly darker. This is this. There we go. How's that looking? Okay, I'm going to stand back. I can't really assess it here. Let's stand back and see. Oh, it's a bit bright, isn't it? Yeah, I know I said it was going to be bright. Let's put in the water and see if that helps at all. I think we need some more darkness back there. Well, I'm gonna plug on with this. I think the stream is still going, so I'm going to carry on because I can't leave it in this state. But if you have other things to do or family members you need to be reacquainted with, it seems like we've been here about 4 weeks at this point. I will not be offended. I hope you've enjoyed it, though. I've enjoyed it, even though I've been constantly complaining the whole time, I know. But I hope you have enjoyed it. And I kind of chose this because I wanted it to be a struggle. And well, it's definitely been a struggle. I didn't want it to be a kind of performance showing off thing, because painting, it really isn't like that. Right, so I'm going to do these reflections. My water needs changing, but okay, I'm going to wet the whole of this front bit. I'm leaving this line where the water changes from rippled to still and where the reflections start. Let's come here. I know it's just a bit too brown. All right. Now let's drop in some darks. I'm just going to let it sit for a bit. I don't want it to run too much, but I do want it to be soft. So let's mix up some darks and see how this looks. I'm still not in the overconfident phase, I have to say. I'm still thinking, oh my goodness, this is a bit embarrassing. Right, let's drop in some darks. And seeing where that line is. Comes along here, and then we have some. Left it too long. Left it too long. It's a very fine line between it running and it just sitting there. And slightly more blue. Comes up to here. On these rocks. It's a little bit of grey coming out there. Another brush. Drop in some red. Okay. Now I've got to make sure they line up, and I shouldn't go by the reference at this point. A little bit of orange. Sits there. A little bit of dark in here. And more dark. Hoping this is still wet. It's a little bit of green down. Ah, now I have to make sure this lines up with the side of that church. I'm hoping this is still wet, so it's gonna bleed a little bit. And the roof, just want it to, I don't want it to completely drip. I do want it to be soft. A little bit of green. Okay. Okay. Oh, there's another couple of comments. Mary, thank you. Michelle, I learned a lot. Well, thank you, Mary. Nice to see you. And Carol says, what level painter do you give your Zoom lessons for? So non-beginners. It's not a beginners class, but it's not an expert class. Well, I mean, but for non-beginners upwards, I think everyone who has had some experience of painting would it wouldn't be too much. And I aim to, as I said, I wouldn't choose this kind of thing for a class. I probably should have chosen something that I would do for a class, but so I like to choose references that people enjoy painting and will come out of the class with something that they're pleased with. So it would probably be something a little less complicated than this. I'm making a real pixie here. Okay. So I call them intermediate. I call the classes intermediate. And I like to take things pretty step by step, not quite as loosey-goosey as this one. And do things, choose references that we can paint more in stages. Right, put dark in there. Okay. Well, so what do you think? I'm not particularly happy. Those reflections didn't work, did they? Oh, I seem to have 40,000 brushes on the go. A little glaze over these rocks here. I'm just going to put a little bit more dark behind. See if this works. I think that helps a lot, actually, didn't it? I think I can still rescue this, although it may take me some time. Let's put in some, put a little bit of colour on. This is too light. A little bit of blue. I'm getting into that. Let's try anything because I can't make it any worse phase. Okay. I'm looking at values now. I want the values to work. So I'm just slopping the paint on. I want these reflections to, this reflection line to show up. Just paint this glaze, they're just poking out a little too defined. Okay, Donna says, "Oh, beautiful." Well, you're very kind, Donna. I think that's probably not the case. I enjoy the painting of the trees and the point technique. Yes, yes. I think it was all going fine up until that point. This needs to be darker. I'm just gonna. I'm adjusting values right now. I'm gonna make that slightly darker. I want this to really look like there's a it curves over there. Let's stick some rocks. This needs to be a lot darker. I'm gonna have to wait for that to dry now. This tree is annoying me. Okay, let's put just something on that tree. Just a little bit of brown on there. All right, rocks. Just a few little things just to show there's something going on. Don't think it'll need much. Just painting the shadows on them. There's one in there, but that's too wet. Just a few out here. Does anybody? Oh, we still have people left because you've got more stamina than I have. Well, it's definitely been a warts and all live stream, don't you think? You know. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad actually. It's coming. It's slowly coming together. It's taking a lot, I have to say. It's really taking a lot. Oh, I didn't put in my big dark tree. Just put in my big dark tree. Just going to put in some dark accents. It's not really painting things. Just putting in some dark bits. Just for visual interest, really. It's actually a little dark shape here. I'm getting very I don't know, brush happy. And I'm really responding, just seeing what does. I'm not really looking at the reference anymore. I'm looking at the painting and seeing what does it need, apart from a good talking to. A bit of softening there. A little bit of brown on this one. It's this bit. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Major surgery on this now. Major surgery. I think I've just about brought it back from the brink. Just about. This may, well, she says she might be just about to ruin everything again. All my colour has disappeared from my reflections. This is not the way I would normally do these. Yeah, you see that? I think that's improved things. I'm using my brush to soften. And just a little bit of colour. Just that's, I think that's better. Just wanted to get that, yeah, you see how that value, it comes down, it just makes things better. Just drop in a bit of colour. So I lost all my reds in there. This is really emergency surgery now. Okay. Okay. Oh, a couple more comments. Carol says, I appreciate hearing how you make your decisions as you paint. I'm glad about that. Yes, I do try and do that. I've also learned a lot about your color choices. Okay, great, great. Right, I think I'm going to almost call it, I'm not embarrassed by it anymore, which is a good thing. There's one last thing I'm going to do. This bit here, it's ever so slightly darker back here than it is there, so I'm going to just put that wash on. It's just looking a little flat. Let's see how that looks. All right, it's not a huge change. I'm just going to put it slightly darker here. And then fade that out. A little more. Oh, I'm not sure that worked. Okay, at this point, I'm going to have to quit, I think. Well, thank you everyone for coming. It's not my greatest triumph, I have to say. But I enjoyed it. And sometimes when things don't go very well, it frees you up and you start doing things and making choices you wouldn't make. Okay, it's not hideous. It's not hideous. Okay, it's not fantastic. Not the best thing I've ever done. But anyway, yeah, so I'll put it back on me. Thank you again for coming. So we're doing something different next week, not so much colour. I might try and fix this up a bit more and post that. So lovely to see everyone. It's lovely. It's great that people put in comments and you stuck it out for 2.5 hours. I feel a bit embarrassed, but you know, that's painting for you. And I did say at the beginning it was going to be challenging. It definitely was challenging. I don't know if anyone was painting along apart from Maggie. Yeah, but I feel your pain. Okay, guys. I hope to see some of you again next week. I will be here again next week. We're going to do the snow scene, I think. And yeah, that was great. Yeah, I'll see you again next week, or not. Or you know, it's always lovely to see you. Okay, bye bye. End stream.